Max Olson with us, ESPN. Yeah, Max, normally we get into games and we will, the stop rate and we will, but obviously today with Mack Rhoades probably perhaps no longer will be the AD at Baylor right now, interim, with Jovan and Cody no longer a part of the playoff committee. What is your reaction to this part of the story involving Mack and Baylor?
Yeah, certainly surprising to hear this morning. And I've always had a good relationship with Mack, and certainly don't know all the details here and what is being investigated right now. But certainly very surprising to hear, and pretty big ripple effects there, not just for not just for Baylor and Dave Aranda, but for the College Football Playoff Committee, and who's chairing that, and who's, I believe Mark Harlan from Utah is going to take his place in the committee there. So pretty big turn of events that have a lot of impact there. And I certainly can't speak to all the details there, but was surprised to say the least.
Max, do you think that this is kind of an indication that Baylor needs to kind of move on completely, not only from Mack Rhoades, but maybe Dave Aranda as well, and kind of start anew, given the fact that this all intersects with the fact that fan apathy at Baylor has not been this high since maybe the pre-Guy Morris era? Yeah,
that's just another, that's another uncomfortable angle of this too, is just sort of like, what's going to happen to Baylor football here as you look to 26. And, I think that how they finish this out, will be fascinating to watch. And, I think there's probably two sides to that, right? There's probably like, what makes sense for Baylor? What can Baylor afford to do at the end of this year? Can they afford to make a change and try to compete for one of these guys that everybody else wants? And then on the other end of that, if you're Dave Aranda and you're going through this turmoil right now, like, are you someone who is trying to go get the job at Stanford or UCLA or some of these jobs that are open right now? Like, do you kind of try to look for a way out here too? So yeah, I think certainly over the next month here, it'd be very interesting to see on both sides kind of like what they want to do here at the end of the year.
Max, you have your latest stop rate out, and Texas Tech at number 1, Ohio State. San Diego State's having a hell of a year. Toledo and then Utah rounding out the top 5. What did you make of Tech's big win over BYU? And just kind of when you go through these every week, what stands out to you from a national perspective as well in terms of the numbers you're seeing and the teams you're seeing?
Yeah, I think that really impressive. The Texas Tech performance against BYU really didn't feel like there was any moment in that game in which BYU's offense was going to get it going against that Texas Tech defense. And I think it was the 5th time this season that Texas Tech has shut out their opponent on offense through 3 quarters. So I think that as much as we've talked about the defensive line and just how elite those guys are, Jacob Rodriguez, obviously Tech is trying to mount a Heisman campaign for him, but really, Shield Wood deserves a ton of credit for. You can say, they spent all this money and they brought in all these players and really, fixed the defense in the portal. But what Shield Wood has been able to do for that defense in getting everyone to play at a really high level and all 11 playing together, that's hard to do. It's hard to put all the puzzle pieces together like they have and then be as effective as they have, every week pretty consistently in this conference. And so, it's an excellent defense in Lubbock. I think there's probably a strong case for Ohio State really having the best defense in college football. Texas ahead of them right now in stop rate. I think Ohio State has really not put much on tape this year to suggest that they're going to struggle in these big games. So I think that's another one, like another first-year DC and Matt Patricia. Obviously, he inherited a lot of talent, but remember, guys, they lost a lot to the NFL. And so I think they only had like 3 starters coming back. Obviously Caleb Downs is one of them, but that's a defense that it's been incredibly consistent and playing at as higher of a level than they did last year when they were number 1 in stop rate under Jim Knowles.
All right, there's a lot of attention and the story involving Jacob Rodriguez, his wife, and that should be the case. But if you had to vote, and I'm not talking Heisman because I know Rodriguez's name has come up there too, but who's more impactful on that defense, David Bailey or Jacob Rodriguez? And that's a positive thing because both could be true.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is like kind of the thing that hurts the Heisman campaign a tiny bit. Is I think when you watch Texas Tech and you watch them against BYU, David Bailey's leading the country in sacks. He's leading the country in edge pressures. The Stanford transfer has just been unbelievable, and he is certainly. I talked to a lot of people when I was putting together the piece last week on D-line, and I think people really do feel like he's solidly like a top 20 pick in this upcoming draft, and I think. One of our guys, Jordan Reed, has him, I think, going 13th in his most recent mock draft. So, yeah, David Bailey is he's making a ton of money at Texas Tech. He's making over $3 million this year, but he's earned a lot of money too in terms of his draft stock with what he's done. And I think another one is Lee Hunter. I think Lee Hunter doesn't get enough attention for being as dominant as he is up front. And you guys remember, when Baylor's D-line was elite. They've had these guys too with Bravion Roy, with Siaki Ika. Like, that guy in the middle doesn't get the glory. They don't get all the stats, but when you've got a difference maker there, it makes the linebacker's job so easy. And Jacob Rodriguez is having a historic year on defense, and has a chance to break the single season and career record for forced fumbles here this year. So he's having a crazy year, but there's a lot of guys that deserve the love there at Tech.
Max, Texas goes between the hedges this week, and they've not looked fantastic. Oklahoma looks like maybe they're starting to get it back. Do you think either one of these teams, even if they win this week, can still keep it going to make the playoffs after that? Because they both have tough games, even after Alabama and Georgia.
Do you guys think that if Texas can beat either A&M or Georgia, that Texas is in the playoff at 9-3?
If you ask me about 99% of other teams that might be in that same position, I would say that's still going to be incredibly hard. But yeah, you have to think that's.
I kind of think so. I think Texas could certainly finish 8-4. Don't get me wrong, but I think a 9-3 Texas that wins one of these two games is probably getting a spot in that playoff. And I think that. You'd have to, if they can win one of those two, I think people will be ranking them ahead of Notre Dame in those final rankings. So I think that Texas has an opportunity here. You could treat the Georgia game like a must win, I suppose, but I think they have to win one of these two. And, they're coming off a bye week. They have a chance to kind of put a plan together against Georgia, who looked really good last week against Mississippi State. But you got to remember too, like, Texas had a big opportunity last year against Georgia in Austin, and that defense, what Glenn Schumann did to Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning, really kind of shell shocked that Texas offense. So I think that chess match of how Sark and his offense respond against Georgia's defense and all the different things that they're going to throw at Arch Manning, fascinated to watch that. I think Georgia will win, but I think that this is a big spot, big opportunity for Arch Manning and that team to show how far they've come. I just think Alabama is going to be really hard to beat this weekend. I really do. And it's a revenge game for them, obviously, after the way it went in Norman last year. But I think every week John Mateer is getting a little bit healthier, and I think that's a huge thing for the team, because when you watch Oklahoma, that defense is incredible, but the offense is it's the John Mateer show, and he has to generate everything. He's the point guard who has to create everything in that offense. And so, it's really on him to, until they find a consistent run game, it's on him to be healthy and to make everything happen. And I think that's a lot of pressure on a guy. But I think he's going to make it interesting.
Max, I say this somewhat tongue in cheek. Is there going to be a 2026 quarterback controversy in Lincoln, Nebraska?
Oh,
I got asked on a radio show this week about, like, can Nebraska, is it even possible Nebraska can have both on their roster next year? And I think that's always the challenge, right? As soon as a freshman blows up, it's like, okay, well, you're gonna have to pay up to keep him, and like, what's he willing to take? And there's always going to be one team out there that's willing to overpay and make him their guy. And I think that's going to be the really interesting situation here. With I think 2 games left for Nebraska, Penn State, and Iowa. Can TJ Lateef put enough on tape here these next few weeks that it's like, oh, now someone's coming in and making them $1 million offer, and now you kind of can't afford to have both there. It's going to be interesting to see. I certainly think Nebraska is committed to Dylan Raiola being their quarterback next year. I don't think anything is going to change there over the next few weeks. But this is an opportunity for TJ Lateef to go out and really make an impression on people. And I think as these schools, yes, everybody's trying to like go over the cap and do whatever they want. But that is one of those situations that's going to be like kind of hard to manage here going forward. Is like, we're already in kind of a time where it's hard to keep a great backup. And I think what TJ Lateef showed against UCLA, that might lead to people being like, hey, let's go get that guy.
I tell you what I noticed in that game, and I know that happens a lot of times because of where he was playing, just around his hometown of Compton in L.A., but
yeah,
that team seems to love him. There seems to be a tremendous amount of, like the teammates love him. That doesn't mean they don't like Dylan Raiola, but they seem to be really, really entrenched with him.
Yeah, I think it's a great sign when a team, steps up around their freshman starter and it's just like, hey, we all got to be better to make things better for him. And, I think you certainly saw before the injury for Dylan Raiola that like Nebraska, the protection wasn't great, and that was putting Dylan Raiola in some tough spots and stuff like that. And I think the mobility of Lateef probably helps a little bit while their offensive line, goes through struggles and stuff like that. And so I think that element helps, I think, offensively. And then, I think there's another piece to that, and that's it's not really getting much national attention, but around here, like Nebraska is trying to make a Heisman push with Emmett Johnson too. I mean, I think that he's leading the country in yards from scrimmage this year. I think he's over 1,400 now. He's been excellent. He was really, really good against UCLA. Had over 100 rushing, over 100 receiving. I don't know that he's a household name to a lot of people yet. But a guy who, certainly they might have a hard time bringing him back next year because he may be going pro off the year he's having. So having that guy to lean on, I think is going to give Nebraska a chance to win a few more games.
Max, if you were a candidate for the LSU job a week ago, and then you found out that when they fired Brian Kelly, they decided that they should have fired him for cause and then tried to say that he was, even though he wasn't, and did all this, would that lower your maybe enthusiasm for that job?
You kind of know you're jumping into the deep end there if you're taking that job. I think for me it would just embolden me more to be like, no, I think you got to pay me like $13 million a year, right, to just sort of like put up with all the extra stuff.
Mack Olson with us, 365 Sports. And by the way, I'm sending you a box of Emmett Johnson Heisman Trophy cards. And I need you don't need to distribute them where you are because they're excited about it.
Oh, you're leading the campaign? You're like the chairman of the campaign?
I can't. And I'm not sure you can either because we are both fortunate to have a vote for the Heisman. So we can't even discuss it. Right. I may have just crossed the line.
You may have. Yeah, you may have. I don't know that you and I can lead a Heisman campaign, but we can talk about him with enthusiasm. That's for sure.
We can. Absolutely, we can. Hey, man.
But do you guys, to that question though, do you guys think LSU is becoming like kind of a weird stay away situation if you're like Lane Kiffin or one of these really top candidates?
What do you guys think?
Man, I don't know. Like, if I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm just staying where I am and fleecing Ole Miss for as much money as I can and
just have them start building the statue this offseason.
Yeah, exactly. Because the thing is at LSU, and it's going to be easier to do it there, or at Florida, they want him to be in the playoff tomorrow. And while he might be able to do that, he hasn't even done it at Ole Miss yet. So I would rather just keep building as opposed to where those two fan bases aren't going to realize that he's never been in the playoff, and maybe he is this year, but he hasn't done it that often, so it's no guarantee he's just going to roll into your town and make that happen. And then that comes with the, well, why are we paying this guy $13 million a year to come in and do this if he can't do it right away?
Yeah, for me,
I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, I would not trade the job security and kind of the charm of doing your own thing where you are right now and with it going so well, as opposed to going to a blue blood where you kind of know if it's not working in 3 years, you're out of there. And he's already got so much in motion right now that I think he's in a good spot. But what I will say is no disrespect to LSU, but this whole thing from earlier this week. If I can't trust the contract that I sign, well, then if all things are equal between Florida and LSU, I'm taking the Florida job if I'm leaving Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think that when you look at Florida and Auburn, I think those are both situations where you're like, and even maybe Penn State too, where it's like, we're going to support you, but like, we know we have work to do. Like, we know this is not going to all happen tomorrow. I think LSU is a job where it's like, whoever gets this job, like, no, we expect to compete for SEC championships tomorrow. We expect to be in the playoffs. Like, Brian Kelly did not, live up to the potential of this place. And, we trust you can flip it fast, and we expect to be playing at the highest level. And so I just think that's something that comes with that, right? And I think that's something that if you're Lane Kiffin, you take that job, they're going to expect you to win big, or they're going to fire you. And I think some coaches will be drawn to that of like, man, at LSU, you have a chance to win the national championship and maybe do it very quickly. And obviously that was the appeal for Brian Kelly of like, it's going to be easier to win a national championship at LSU than it is at Notre Dame. So I think LSU will make a big hire, but there's no question, like you are starting with day one expectations that are very different than if you go take Florida or Auburn or Penn State or these other premier jobs that are out there.
Max, thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate your time. Are you going to cover a game this week, or are you just going to watch a bunch of them at one time at home?
Watching as many as I can.
Yep, that's what we do. Thank you.